In the great cycles that bind our cosmos, there are moments when threads of fate become intertwined. Worlds that should never touch suddenly collide, and heroes who were never meant to meet find their destinies inexorably linked. This is such a tale, a story of thunder across realms, of godhood tested against ancient power, and of what happened when the mighty Thor, son of Odin, prince of Asgard, found himself cast into the shattered realm of the lands between. The first signs came as whispers across Asgard's golden spires. The Bifrost Bridge shimmered with unfamiliar energies. The All-Father grew restless in his slumber, muttering of rings and fractured order. Even Heimdall, whose gaze pierced the veils between worlds, found his vision clouded by a strange golden light that seemed to both beckon and warn. Thor stood upon the edge of Asgard, Mjolnir hanging heavy at his side, watching as the stars themselves seemed to realign. Something was pulling at the fabric of reality, something ancient and powerful beyond measure. As lightning crackled across his knuckles, the god of thunder felt it too, a calling, not to battle, not to glory, but to judgment, to choice. "What troubles you, my son?" Frigga's voice came gentle as she approached, her gown flowing like liquid starlight around her feet. "There is a disharmony in the realms, mother," Thor replied, his eyes fixed on the horizon where reality itself seemed to bend. "I feel it in Mjolnir's weight, in the very air we breathe. Something calls." Frigga's expression grew solemn. "There are worlds beyond our 9 realms, Thor, places not meant for gods such as we. Take care that your courage does not lead you where even Odin would fear to tread." Before Thor could respond, the sky split open, not with the familiar rainbow light of the Bifrost, but with a sickly golden fracture that seemed to bleed grace and ruin in equal measure. A tree appeared in the void, impossibly vast yet somehow broken, its branches reaching toward him with terrible purpose. "The Erd tree calls," came a voice that was not a voice, carried on winds that did not blow. "The Elden ring is shattered. A new lord is required." Thor raised Mjolnir instinctively, but the power that now enveloped him was beyond even his godly might. As Asgard faded from view, the last thing he heard was his mother's anguished cry, not of fear, but of terrible knowledge. She had seen this moment, perhaps, in the weaving of fates, and what she had seen had filled even her immortal heart with dread. The god of thunder fell through golden void, through starless space where time had no meaning. He felt Mjolnir slip from his grasp, felt his very essence being unmade and remade, and knew with terrible certainty that whatever awaited him would test not just his strength, but the very nature of his divinity. When consciousness returned, Thor found himself lying upon blighted earth beneath a sky alight with fragments of gold that hung like broken stars. The air tasted of ash and something sweeter, more intoxicating, power, ancient and raw. Before him stretched a landscape of ruin and terrible beauty, crumbling castles, twisted forests, and creatures that defied comprehension, all bathed in the sickly golden light of a fractured tree that dominated the horizon, the Erd tree. Even without being told its name, Thor knew it for what it was, a cosmic axis, a pillar of creation not unlike Yggdrasil, yet fundamentally wrong in ways he could not articulate. Where Yggdrasil connected worlds, this tree seemed to consume them. Where Yggdrasil flourished with life, this tree exuded a sense of stagnation, of grace perverted. Thor rose unsteadily to his feet, immediately aware of a terrible absence. Mjolnir was gone, not just from his hand, but from his sense of self. The hammer that had been an extension of his very being for millennia was no longer answering his call. In its place was a crude axe, its edge notched and worn, utterly unworthy of a god's hand. "Welcome, Tarnished," came a voice from behind him. Thor whirled, instinctively raising the pathetic weapon. Before him stood a maiden clothed in dark robes, her eyes hidden beneath a blindfold, her face a mask of serene acceptance. "I am no Tarnished," Thor growled, the word foreign and distasteful on his tongue. "I am Thor Odinson, god of thunder, prince of—" "You are tarnished now," the maiden interrupted, her voice gentle but allowing no argument. "Whatever you were before, the lands between care not. Like all who are called here, you have lost the grace of the greater will. Only by claiming the fragments of the Elden ring and becoming Elden Lord can you reclaim your purpose." Thor laughed, a sound that rolled like distant thunder. "I am already a god, maiden. I have no need of rings or lordship." The maiden's lips curved in what might have been pity. Reach within yourself, Thor Odinson. Find the divinity you claim." Frowning, Thor did as instructed, reaching for the well of cosmic power that had flowed through his veins since birth. To his shock, he found it dimmed, weakened, not gone entirely, but muted, as if something in this realm suppressed his godhood. He could still feel the potential for lightning at his fingertips, but calling it would require effort that had once been as natural as breathing. "What sorcery is this?" he demanded, genuine alarm creeping into his voice. "No sorcery, merely the nature of the lands between. Here true power comes only from grace, and grace has been denied to all since the shattering. Even gods must prove themselves worthy." Thor stared at the pitiful axe in his hand, then at the distant Erd tree with its golden light. A test, then, another trial to overcome, not unlike those his father had set before him throughout his long life. He had been humbled before, stripped of power and forced to learn wisdom. If this was to be another such lesson, he would face it as he had all others. "Speak plainly, maiden. What must I do in this realm?" "Seek the great runes, fragments of the Elden ring carried by the demigod children of Marika. Defeat them, claim their power, and restore the ring. Become Elden Lord, and perhaps then you may find your way home." Demigods. Thor's expression darkened. In his experience, those who styled themselves as divine while being less than true gods were often the most dangerous, the most corrupted by their taste of power. And yet, had he not once been much the same, arrogant in his strength, careless with his might, until humility had been forced upon him? "And if I refuse this quest, if I seek my own path back to Asgard?" The maiden's voice grew cold. "Then you will wander these lands forever, dying again and again, your mind slowly unraveling until you become one of the mindless hollow, remembering neither your name nor your purpose. The lands between do not release those who are called tarnished. They must either ascend or fall into oblivion." Thor gazed out across the blighted landscape, considering his options. Without Mjolnir, without the full measure of his power, his chances of forcing his way home seemed slim, and something in the maiden's words rang true. He could feel it in the air, in the very soil beneath his feet. This place had rules, cosmic laws as binding as those that governed Asgard or Midgard. "You have not given me your name, maiden." "I am Melina, offering an accord. Guide you to the Erd tree, where you may find your great runes and perhaps your hammer." Thor's head snapped up at that. "Mjolnir is here. I sense a power not of this world, held where broken grace gathers thickest. Whether it is your hammer, I cannot say, but it calls to you as you call to it." That was enough. Thor had traveled worlds before, had faced trials and enemies beyond counting. If his power was diminished, he would simply fight harder. If his weapon was lost, he would reclaim it. And if these self-proclaimed demigods stood in his path, they would learn what it meant to face the son of Odin, even at a fraction of his strength. Lead on, Melina. Show me these demigods who think themselves worthy of godhood. Their journey began in a place called Limgrave, a land of rolling hills and ruins beneath the golden boughs of the distant Erdtree. Almost immediately, Thor encountered the horrors that plagued this realm. Twisted creatures that had once been human, monstrous beasts that defied natural law, and soldiers whose minds had long since abandoned them, leaving only endless, mindless duty. Against these lesser foes, even diminished as he was, Thor proved formidable. The crude axe in his hands might lack Mjolnir's worthiness, but it cleaved flesh and bone efficiently enough. And while his godly strength was muted, he remained far stronger than any mortal warrior. What surprised him most was how quickly he adapted, how the instincts honed through centuries of battle served him even here, in this alien realm. Yet as Melina guided him toward his first true challenge, a demigod called Godric the Grafted, Thor began to understand the true nature of the lands between. This was a place where death itself had been corrupted, where souls lingered in bodies long past their natural end. The very concept of time seemed distorted, with ancient ruins standing alongside structures that appeared almost new, all suspended in a twilight state of neither growth nor true decay. "These demigods," Thor said as they made camp beneath a shattered statue of what appeared to be a many-armed goddess, "tell me of them. Who are they to claim divine blood?" Melina's voice came soft in the gathering darkness. "They are the children of Marika, herself a god elevated by the greater will. When the Elden ring shattered, they each claimed a great rune for themselves, fragments of divine power that drove them to madness and war. They have ruled these lands for uncounted years, growing ever more corrupt, ever more desperate to maintain their dwindling divinity." Thor snorted. "I have seen gods born and gods fall. True divinity does not shatter so easily. Perhaps that is why you were called Odinson. Perhaps the lands between require a different kind of god." The words hung between them, heavy with implication. Was that why he had been brought here? Not merely as another tarnished seeking lordship, but as something else entirely, a foreign divinity, introduced into a dying pantheon. The thought was troubling. Thor had learned caution where godhood was concerned, had seen too often the price of divine hubris. Their path led them to Stormvale Castle, a sprawling fortress where Godric the Grafted held court among his twisted servants. As they approached the massive gates, a storm gathered overhead, not a natural tempest, but something conjured by malevolent will. "He senses you," Melina said. "Godric fears new tarnished with the potential to challenge him. He will throw everything at you to prevent your approach." Thor looked up at the swirling clouds, feeling a familiar pull in his blood. Storms had always been his domain, had always answered to his will rather than threatened him. Even here, with his power diminished, he could feel the lightning above calling to him. "Let him fear," Thor said, raising his hand to the sky. With effort that would once have been effortless, he called down a bolt of lightning, weaker than his usual strikes, but enough to splinter the massive gate before them. The guards stationed there fell back in shock and terror. I have faced frost giants and fire demons, Thor continued, striding forward as lightning continued to dance around his form. I have battled creatures that devour stars and heroes who channel cosmic forces. If this Godric thinks himself a god because he steals the limbs of his enemies to graft onto his form, then he knows nothing of true divinity. As they fought their way through Stormvale's defenses, Thor began to understand the nature of his diminished power. It was not gone merely, reconfigured. In this realm, power flowed differently. Governed by rules he was only beginning to grasp. The more he fought, the more souls he claimed from fallen enemies, the stronger he became. Not through his birthright as a god, but through a kind of spiritual evolution unique to the lands between. It was humbling and strangely liberating. Here his royal blood and divine parentage meant nothing. Here he earned his strength through trial and sacrifice, through death and persistence. For perhaps the first time since his banishment to Midgard so long ago, Thor found himself truly starting from nothing, proving his worth not through who he was, but through what he could endure. When at last they reached the inner courtyard where Godric awaited, Thor paused. The creature before him barely resembled anything humanoid. A mass of grafted limbs surrounded a central figure, arms and legs of various sizes sprouting from a torso that seemed too small to support them. At the center of this grotesque collection was a face twisted with bitterness and fear, eyes that had witnessed millennia yet understood nothing of wisdom. Another tarnished, come to challenge the mighty Godric, the demigod croaked, his voice a cacophony as though multiple throats spoke at once. I command thee, kneel. Thor stepped forward, electricity crackling around him. I am Thor Odinson, and I kneel only to those worthy of respect. You, creature, are not even worthy of pity. Godric's many limbs tensed. You know nothing of worth. I am of the golden lineage, direct descendant of Godfrey, my divine blood. Blood means nothing, Thor interrupted, thinking of his own brother Loki, of how birthright had poisoned his mind. It is deed that defines divinity. And your deeds, Godric, speak only of fear and desperation. With a howl of rage, Godric attacked, his many arms wielding axes, swords, and spears in a whirlwind of steel. Thor met the assault head-on, his borrowed axe moving with increasing confidence as he found the rhythm of this new way of battle. Where once he might have simply overpowered such a foe with godly strength, now he was forced to study, to observe patterns, to wait for openings. It was during this battle, as Godric called down fire and wind to aid his physical attacks, that Thor began to truly understand what had happened to his power. It wasn't gone. It had been redistributed, reshaped to fit the cosmic laws of the lands between. The lightning that had once been his to command without thought now required focus, intention. The strength that had once been limitless now had boundaries, could be exhausted if used carelessly, and, strangest of all, when Godric's grafted axe finally found its mark, tearing through Thor's armor and into his flesh, the god of thunder experienced true pain, not the muted sensation he knew as an Asgardian, but sharp, mortal agony. He staggered back, golden blood mingling with red, and realized a terrible truth. In the lands between, he was as vulnerable to death as any tarnished. The realization should have frightened him. Instead, it awakened something long dormant. Without the safety of his godhood, every decision mattered. Every movement had consequence. There was a purity to this fight that Thor had not experienced in centuries of battle. With renewed purpose, Thor pressed his attack, no longer fighting as a god among mortals, but as a warrior proving his worth. When Godric, desperate and wounded, grafted a dragon's head to his arm to unleash a torrent of flame, Thor did not retreat. Instead, he charged directly into the fire, letting it wash over him as he closed the distance and buried his axe in the demigod's chest. Godric fell to his knees, his many limbs twitching and then falling limp. From his body rose a golden light, the great rune that had sustained his corrupted existence for so long. "Impossible!" the demigod gasped as his form began to crumble. "You are just tarnished. How?" Thor stood over his fallen enemy, watching as the great rune hovered before him. "I am tarnished," he acknowledged, "but I am also Thor, and now I think I begin to understand why I was called to your realm." As Thor reached out and claimed the first great rune, absorbing its power into himself, he felt a shift in the fabric of reality. Somewhere, distant yet somehow intimately close, he sensed Mjolnir responding to his victory. His hammer was indeed in this realm, waiting for him to prove himself worthy once more, and beyond that he sensed other presences, the remaining demigods, each clutching their fragment of the Elden ring, each ruling over their domain with corrupted grace. They would be watching now, aware that something unprecedented had entered their stagnant world. Something that was neither fully tarnished nor truly divine by their understanding, yet somehow both. Thor turned to Melina, the great rune's power settling into his being, changing him in subtle ways he could not yet fully comprehend. "Who next?" he asked, lightning dancing between his fingers with newfound ease. The maiden's hidden eyes seemed to study him with renewed interest. "You head north, to Liurnia of the Lakes. There, Renala, Queen of the Full Moon, awaits, guardian of rebirth and keeper of the great rune of the unborn." Thor nodded, looking toward the distant horizon where a massive academy rose from the center of a vast lake. "Then to Liurnia we go, and after that." Melina's voice carried a note of something new, not quite hope, but perhaps the memory of it. "After that the path grows darker still, Radan the Star-Scourge, Rykard, Lord of Blasphemy, Morgoth the Omen King, and beyond them all, that which waits within the Erd tree itself." Thor hefted his axe, already feeling dissatisfied with its modest weight. Soon, he thought, Mjolnir would return to his hand. Soon he would understand the true purpose behind his summoning to this broken realm. "Let them come," he said as thunder rolled across the distance. "Let them all come." Thunder rolled across the once golden fields of Limgrave as Thor, with Mjolnir in hand and the Elden ring's power coursing through his veins, surveyed the lands between. No longer was he merely the god of thunder from Asgard. He had become something both greater and more terrible. The ring's whispers grew stronger in his mind with each passing day. Its golden radiance had fused with Thor's inherent lightning, creating storms unlike any the beleaguered realm had ever witnessed. Where normal grace once flowed like gentle rivers, Thor's power surged like flash floods, erratic and overwhelming. "The land needs a true lord," Thor muttered to himself, his voice carrying on the wind like distant thunder. "Not these pretenders hiding in their castles." From her celestial prison, Marika felt the shift in the Elden ring's power. Something foreign had taken hold of her creation, something that did not belong to this world or its laws. The Golden Order trembled as Thor's Asgardian essence clashed with the fundamental principles of the lands between. In Leyndell, the royal capital, the Erdtree Knights gathered in alarmed council. Their golden armor reflected the unnatural lightning that now constantly flashed across the skies. "This new power defies the greater will," declared Commander Nile, his prosthetic arm clenching into a fist. "It comes from beyond our stars, beyond our gods." Meanwhile, Thor strode confidently through Stormvale Castle. The once imposing stronghold of Godric the Grafted now lay in ruins, its formidable guardian defeated with a single mighty swing of Mjolnir. The god of thunder had little patience for the demigod's boasts about grafting the arms of his enemies to his body. "You call yourself Lord. You are unworthy of the title." Thor had roared as Godric's body crumbled before him, the countless limbs attached to the demigod withering like branches in frost. As word of Godric's defeat spread, the various factions across the lands between responded differently to the arrival of this otherworldly being. Some saw Thor as a liberator, destined to end the shattering and restore order to a broken world. Others recognized a new tyrant, perhaps more dangerous than those they already knew. In the scarlet wastes of Kaled, Star-Scourge Radan felt the disturbance in the cosmic forces. Even in his mindless, rot-addled state, the mighty general sensed a challenge to his dominion over gravity itself. His massive body shifted restlessly upon the bloodied sands of his arena, as if preparing for a battle unlike any he had faced before. Thor's journey continued to the Academy of Raya Lucaria, where the sorcerers looked upon him with both fear and fascination. Renala, Queen of the Full Moon, ceased her eternal mourning to gaze upon this intruder through her amber egg. "Neither man nor god as we know them," she whispered. "The stars themselves bend in his presence." The sorcerers attempted to study Thor's power, but their crystals shattered when they tried to contain samples of his lightning. This was not the frail lightning they conjured with their glintstone magic. This was primordial storm energy, the birthright of a god from another cosmos entirely. When Thor approached the Academy gates, the defenses activated automatically. Glintstone sorcerers and knights emerged to halt his advance. "Your magic is impressive," Thor acknowledged, as their spells crashed against his armor and skin with minimal effect. "But I have faced the sorcery of 1,000 worlds. Yours is but a candle against the inferno of Asgard." With a swing of Mjolnir, he shattered the protective barriers that had stood for thousands of years. The Academy's defenders fell back in disarray as Thor entered the Grand Hall to confront Renala herself. Unlike the other demigods, Renala did not challenge Thor directly. Instead, she regarded him with the wisdom of countless ages. "You carry a ring of power that does not belong to you," she said, her voice soft but firm. "The Elden ring responds to your strength, but do you understand its nature? It is not merely a source of power, it is the fundamental law of our world." Thor paused, intrigued by her words rather than her power. "Explain." "The ring is order itself. It dictates how life and death function in our realm. By wielding it without understanding, you risk unraveling the very fabric of our existence." Thor considered her words. For a moment, doubt clouded his features. But the Elden Ring's influence surged within him, drowning out caution with promises of glory. "I will restore order as I see fit," he declared, though something in Renala's warning had planted a seed of uncertainty in his mind. As Thor departed the Academy, leaving it standing unlike Stormvale, the corruption of the Elden Ring's power began manifesting more visibly. The lightning storms that followed in his wake now carried fragments of golden grace, twisted into something new, a power that burned rather than nurtured. In distant Asgard, Heimdall's all-seeing gaze had finally located Thor after days of searching the cosmos. What he witnessed troubled him deeply. The rainbow bridge shimmered as he summoned Odin to his observatory. "All-Father, I have found your son," Heimdall reported grimly, "but he is changed. A foreign power has taken hold of him, something ancient and fundamental to another world entirely." Odin's single eye narrowed. "Show me." Through Heimdall's vision, Odin watched as Thor confronted Star-Scourge Radan on the battlefield of Kalid. The massive general, once renowned as the mightiest of the demigods, charged across the crimson landscape, the small horse beneath him somehow supporting his enormous frame. Thor stood his ground, Mjolnir crackling with power, enhanced by the Elden Ring's golden energy. When their powers collided, Thor's cosmic lightning against Radan's mastery of gravity, the very laws of physics seemed to warp and distort around them. "He wields power he does not understand," Odin muttered. "This will not end well for Thor or for the realm he now walks in." The battle between Thor and Radan reshaped the landscape of Kalid. Mountains crumbled as Radan's gravity magic pulled them down, while Thor's lightning split the earth, creating new chasms. For hours they fought, neither gaining a decisive advantage. It was the first real challenge Thor had faced since claiming the Elden Ring, and something about the struggle awakened a clarity that had been clouded by the ring's influence. "You fight well, General," Thor called out during a momentary pause in their combat. "Few beings in any realm have withstood Mjolnir's might for so long." Radan gave no response save a bestial roar. The scarlet rot had long since consumed his mind, leaving only instinct and power. As their battle resumed with even greater intensity, a slender figure watched from the shadows of a distant dune. Malenia, the blade of Miquella, observed with keen interest as the two titans clashed. Her body, ravaged by the same rot that had claimed Radan's mind, tensed as she considered whether this newcomer might be the key to finding her long-lost brother. The conflict reached its climax when Thor, recognizing the futility of conventional combat against Radan's gravity manipulation, summoned a storm of unprecedented scale. The skies darkened to pitch black as lightning of gold and blue entwined in massive columns. The Elden Ring's power merged with Thor's godly essence, creating a display of force that could be seen from every corner of the lands between. "Enough!" Thor roared, and brought Mjolnir down with all his might. The resulting thunderclap silenced all of Kalid. When the blinding light faded, Radan lay defeated, not destroyed, but rendered unconscious by the overwhelming force. Thor stood over him, breathing heavily, his armor scorched and damaged from the general's onslaught. "You fought with honor," Thor said to the fallen demigod. "I will not take your life." It was in this moment of victory that Malenia chose to approach. Her prosthetic limbs clicked softly against the blasted ground as she emerged from concealment. "Impressive," she said, her voice carrying the weight of centuries despite her youthful appearance. "None have defeated Radan since we fought to a standstill when I was forced to bloom and release the scarlet rot upon this land." Thor turned to face her, immediately recognizing another being of immense power. "And you are. I am Malenia, Blade of Miquella," she replied, a statement she had made countless times before challenging those who stood in her path. "And I have come to propose an alliance." Thor raised an eyebrow, his grip on Mjolnir tightening slightly. "What could you offer that would interest me?" "Knowledge," Malenia replied simply. "You wield the Elden Ring. yet you understand little of its true nature or potential. I can guide you to those who do." For the first time since claiming the ring, Thor felt uncertainty. The battle with Radan had cleared his mind somewhat, allowing him to recognize how the artifact was influencing his thoughts and actions. Perhaps there was wisdom in learning more before proceeding further. "Speak, then," he commanded. Melania gestured toward the north. The three fingers await beneath the capital city. They offer a different path than the greater will, one of chaos rather than order. And then there is my brother Miquella, the most powerful of all the Empyreans, if he could be found and awakened. Thor considered her words. The mention of chaos troubled him. He had come to restore order, not unleash greater destruction. Yet the admission of his incomplete understanding of the Elden Ring's nature rang true. "I will consider your counsel," Thor replied. "But know this, I serve neither fingers nor will. I follow my own path." As Thor departed Caelid, leaving both Radan and Melania behind, the influence of the Elden Ring began to manifest new changes throughout the lands between. Where Thor walked, strange phenomena occurred. Plants grew at accelerated rates, then withered just as quickly. Animals exhibited unusual behaviors, becoming either docile or unnaturally aggressive. Most concerning were the effects on the human inhabitants. Those who pledged loyalty to Thor found themselves blessed with fragments of his power, golden lightning coursing through their veins, enhancing their strength and durability. Those who opposed him suffered mysterious ailments, their bodies gradually calcifying into golden statues. In Lendel, the two fingers trembled continuously, sending their interpreters into fits of panic. The message they received from the greater will was clear. The interloper must be stopped before the fundamental laws of reality were irreparably damaged. The Erdtree Knights mobilized in full force, led by the legendary Crucible Knights, whose ancient powers predated even the Erdtree itself. They marched from Lendel with a singular purpose: to challenge Thor and reclaim the Elden Ring. Meanwhile, in Asgard, Odin had summoned the Warriors Three and Lady Sif to the throne room. "Thor has embroiled himself in the affairs of a realm whose powers even I do not fully comprehend," Odin explained. "You must go to him, not to battle. He has clearly found power beyond even your combined might, but to remind him of who he truly is." "And if he will not listen to reason?" Sif asked, her concern for Thor evident in her voice. Odin's expression darkened. "Then all realms may suffer the consequences of his folly." The Bifrost opened with a brilliant cascade of rainbow light, depositing the Asgardian warriors at the edge of Limgrave. They gazed in wonder at the massive Erdtree dominating the horizon, its golden glow now interspersed with arcs of familiar lightning. "By the Norns," Fandral whispered, "what has he gotten himself into this time?" In the depths beneath Lendel, Thor had indeed sought out the three fingers, driven by a growing desire to understand the true nature of the power he wielded. The descent through the subterranean shunning grounds tested even his godly endurance as he battled through hordes of the capital's discarded monstrosities. When he finally reached the ancient door guarded by Mog the Blood Lord, another fierce battle ensued. Mog's blood magic was unlike anything Thor had encountered, capable of bypassing his Asgardian defenses to inflict wounds that did not heal instantly. "Your blood will feed the coming dynasty," Mog proclaimed as he hurled crimson spears that left burning wounds on Thor's arms and chest. Thor gritted his teeth against the pain. "I have bled on 1,000 battlefields across the 9 realms. Your magic is potent, Blood Lord, but I am Thor." With a mighty effort, Thor channeled both his innate power and the Elden Ring's energy through Mjolnir, creating a blast that shattered Mog's defenses and left the Bloodlord defeated. Beyond the door, Thor found not wisdom, but temptation. The three fingers reached for him, offering chaos as an alternative to the rigid order of the greater will. For a moment, he was almost swayed by their silent promises of absolute freedom from all cosmic laws and responsibilities. But Thor was a prince of Asgard, raised on tales of duty and honor. Even through the Elden Ring's corrupting influence, he recognized the danger. "I seek balance, not annihilation," he declared, turning away from their outstretched digits. As Thor emerged from the depths, he found Lendl transformed into a battlefield. The Erdtree Knights had engaged his newfound followers in combat throughout the capital's grand boulevards and plazas. Golden lightning clashed with the sacred power of the Erdtree as the two forces fought for the future of the lands between. Standing at the steps of the grand cathedral were four figures who immediately drew Thor's attention, not because they posed any threat, but because they were intimately familiar. Sif, Fandral, Hogun, Volstagg. Thor approached them, momentarily forgetting the chaos around him. "What are you doing here?" Lady Sif stepped forward. "We've come to bring you home, Thor. Whatever power you've found here, it's changing you. The Thor I know would never allow such devastation in his name." Thor looked around at the burning buildings, the fallen warriors on both sides. Had he caused this? The Elden Ring pulsed on his finger, urging him to dismiss their concerns, to embrace his new role as the lord of this realm. "The All-Father sent us," Volstagg added. "He fears for you, Thor, and for the balance between realms." For the first time since claiming the Elden Ring, Thor felt doubt take root deeply in his heart. He looked down at Mjolnir, once the symbol of his worthiness, now crackling with foreign golden energy that seemed to corrupt its pure power. But before Thor could respond, a new presence made itself known. The sky darkened as massive stone-like wings blocked out the sun. Descending upon the central plaza of Lendl was a dragon of impossible proportions, Placidusax, the ancient dragon lord, awakened from his slumber outside of time by the disturbance in the fundamental laws of the lands between. As the ancient dragon let out a roar that shook the very foundations of the capital, Thor realized that his claiming of the Elden Ring had set in motion events beyond even his godly comprehension. The true test of his worthiness was not in conquering this realm, but in recognizing when he had overstepped the boundaries between worlds. With the warriors three and Lady Sif at his side and the full might of the Elden Ring at his disposal, Thor prepared to face the consequences of his cosmic transgression. But even as he readied Mjolnir for battle, a part of him wondered if some powers were never meant to be claimed. Even by gods, across the twisted landscape the lands between trembled. The Erdtree, once radiant with golden light, now pulsed with the crimson energy of Mjolnir. As Thor rose into the crimson sky, the powers of the Elden Ring and his godly heritage merged, transforming him into something neither Asgardian nor tarnished, but something greater and more terrible. The remaining demigods sensed the shift in power. Malenia, awakened from her slumber in the depths of the Haligtree, unfurled her scarlet wings. Mog, Lord of Blood, ceased his dark communion with the formless mother. Miquella, eternally young, stirred in his cocoon. They knew what was coming. "Let the land echo with a new thunder," Thor proclaimed, his voice carrying across mountains and lakes through caverns and castles. "I am Thor Stormcrown, god of thunder and lord of frenzied flame. The age of fracture ends, the age of storm begins." In Leyndell, Godfrey, the first Elden lord, gripped his axe. The time for hiding had passed. If the 9 realms had sent their champion to claim dominion over the lands between, then he would remind this thunder god why he had once been worthy to stand beside Marika herself. "My lord," Serosh growled from his place on Godfrey's shoulders, "this battle may be our last." Godfrey's weathered face broke into a savage smile. "Then let us make it one worthy of legend." In the depths of Nokron, the eternal city, Ranni the witch felt the familiar stirring of her brother's power, now warped beyond recognition. She gazed at the darkened sky through the false stars of the underground realm. "So the Asgardian has fully embraced madness," she whispered to herself, her 4 arms working in unison to prepare ancient sorceries. "Then it falls to me to ensure this doesn't destroy everything the greater will built." Beside her, Blade howled, sensing the coming conflict. The wolf warrior had been created to serve Ranni, and now his loyalty would be tested as never before. "Come, my shadow," Ranni said, mounting an ethereal steed. "We ride to face a god of another realm." Thor stood atop the highest spire of the Round Table Hold, which he had transformed into a throne of thunder and madness. Lightning continuously struck the building, empowering it with the combined might of Asgard and the frenzied flame. With each passing moment, more of the world bent to his will. But deep within, in moments of clarity between the madness, Thor remembered. He remembered Asgard's golden halls. He remembered his father's wisdom, his mother's kindness. He remembered Jane's love and Loki's mischief. He remembered the oath he took to protect the realms, not to conquer them. These memories came as whispers, quickly drowned by the roaring voice of power. The frenzied flame promised him that with enough power he could break the barriers between worlds. He could return to Asgard not as the failed son, but as its conqueror. "Why settle for one realm when all could be yours?" the flame whispered. "The 9 realms await their true king." Thor's eyes, now burning with yellow fire, gazed northward. There, something approached, a golden light cutting through the crimson storm. Godfrey, the first Elden lord, led an army of tarnished and loyal soldiers. Beside him rode Morgoth, the Omen king, who had finally abandoned his disguise as Margit to defend the realm in its greatest hour of need. "Thor Odinson?" Godfrey's voice boomed across the battlefield. "You come to our realm, take our power, and think yourself our master. Come down and face the judgment of the first who bore the title you claim." Thor smiled. This was what he wanted, a worthy challenge. He raised Mjolnir, which now pulsed with both lightning and the orange fire of chaos, and descended to meet his challenger. The clash between Thor and Godfrey shook the very foundations of the lands between. Each swing of Godfrey's axe carried the weight of a mountain. Each strike of Mjolnir brought down lightning that scarred the earth. They fought across ruins and fields, through forests and lakes, their battle reshaping the landscape. When Godfrey called upon his second phase, shedding the beast Serosh from his back and fighting as Huaralu, warrior, Thor met his ferocity with equal measure. The thunder god had fought countless battles across the cosmos, but never had he faced a human with such raw power. "You fight well, Elden Lord," Thor acknowledged, blood trickling from his mouth as he wiped it away with a grin. "In another life we might have been shield brothers. In another life you might have been worthy of the crown you seek," Godfrey replied, his muscles bulging with primal energy as he charged again. Their battle attracted others. Morgoth joined his adoptive father, his curved sword of light slicing through the air. From the shadows emerged Blade, Ranni's loyal wolf warrior. From the skies descended Radan, general of the stars, who had sensed the cosmic disturbance and temporarily regained his sanity for this final battle. Thor fought them all, the power of the Elden ring and frenzied flame making him nearly invincible. Yet for each demigod that fell before him, another arose to take their place. The lords of the lands between would not surrender their realm without a fight worthy of their legend. As the battle raged, Rani worked in secret, using the knowledge she had gained from studying the greater will and the dark moon. She crafted a spell that might separate the power of the frenzied flame from Thor's essence. It would not strip him of the Elden ring, that was beyond even her capabilities, but it might restore his sanity enough to reason with him. "The convergence approaches," she told Melina, who had joined her cause after witnessing Thor's descent into madness. "When the frenzied flame reaches its peak, there will be a moment of vulnerability. That is when we must strike." Melina, whose purpose had always been to burn the Erd tray, now found herself fighting to save what remained of it. "And if we fail," Rani's four hands continued weaving the spell as her doll-like face remained impassive, "then the worlds burn together." The battle had reached a crescendo. Thor stood amidst the fallen bodies of Lendel's greatest warriors, breathing heavily. Godfrey knelt before him, wounded but defiant, his axe shattered. "Is this how the first Elden Lord meets his end?" Thor asked, raising Mjolnir for a killing blow. "On his knees before a god from another realm." Godfrey looked up, his eyes burning with the pride that had made him legend. "I kneel to recover my strength, Asgardian. So long as one breath remains in my body, I will stand against those who threaten this land." With a roar that belied his injuries, Godfrey lunged forward, grappling Thor with his bare hands. The two titans wrestled in the mud and blood, their struggle symbolic of the realm's resistance against cosmic invasion. It was then that Rani's spell took effect. A beam of blue moonlight shot from the highest tower of Raya Lucaria Academy, striking Thor directly in the chest. The thunder god roared as the spell began separating the chaotic influence of the frenzied flame from his Asgardian essence. "What is this trickery?" he bellowed, the voice of the flame mingling with his own. "It is the light of reason." Rani's voice echoed across the battlefield. "Remember who you are, son of Odin. Remember why you came." The spell tore through Thor's being, forcing the frenzied flame to loosen its grip. Memories flooded back, clearer now, unfiltered by madness. He saw Asgard falling. He saw himself cast into the void between realms. He saw his arrival in the lands between not as conquest but as exile. I am Thor," he gasped, fighting the flame's influence. "I am the protector, not the destroyer." The frenzied flame fought back, sending tendrils of chaos through Thor's body, trying to regain control. "You are nothing without me," it raged within him, "a broken god in a foreign realm." In that moment of internal struggle, Melina appeared before Thor, her closed eye now open, revealing a violet glow. "You have a choice, Thor Odinson," she said, her voice carrying the wisdom of ages. "Continue this path of destruction, or become what this realm, what all realms, truly needs." Thor looked up at her, blood and tears mingling on his face. "And what is that?" "A protector who understands power's burden," she answered, offering her hand. "One who has looked into the abyss of madness and chosen to turn away." Miles away, in the ruins of Stormvale Castle, a pale figure watched the unfolding events with interest. Sir Gideon Ofnir, the all-knowing, had survived Thor's initial purge by hiding amongst ancient knowledge. Now he saw opportunity in chaos. "The flame weakens its hold," he muttered to himself, consulting forbidden texts. When the thunder god falters, the power of the ring will be vulnerable. Gideon had spent lifetimes studying the Elden Ring's mysteries. If Thor could claim it through conquest, then so could others. All he needed was the right moment to strike. Thor's internal battle manifested in the physical world as storms of unprecedented power. Lightning of gold, blue and crimson crisscrossed the sky. The Erd tree shuddered, its light fluctuating between golden grace and chaotic flame. Within this maelstrom, Thor fought the hardest battle of his life, not against external enemies, but against the seductive power that had nearly consumed him. The frenzied flame showed him visions of conquest, Asgard kneeling before him, Odin surrendering Gungnir, the 9 realms united under his banner. "I could return home," Thor whispered. "I could show Father that I am worthy." "And destroy everything he built in the process," came Melina's reply as she maintained her connection to him. "Is that truly the proof of worth you seek?" The words cut through the flame's illusions. Thor saw the truth. His father would rather see Asgard fall than watch his son become a tyrant. With a roar that echoed across dimensions, Thor called upon his deepest power, not the borrowed might of the Elden Ring or the chaotic energy of the frenzied flame, but the power that was his birthright as god of thunder. Lightning erupted from within him, pure and clean, burning away the flame's corruption. The sky cleared for a brief moment as Thor reasserted his true nature. "I am Thor Odinson," he declared, his voice steady, "and I reject the path of flame." The moment Thor's will overcame the frenzied flame, Gideon Ofnir made his move. Using ancient incantations, he attempted to sever Thor's connection to the Elden Ring, hoping to claim it for himself. But Gideon had miscalculated. The Elden Ring had become too intertwined with Thor's essence. As Gideon's spell took effect, it created a backlash of cosmic proportions. Reality itself seemed to tear around Thor, creating a rift between dimensions. Through this rift, Thor glimpsed Asgard, not destroyed as he had feared, but rebuilt and waiting. He saw his people searching the cosmos for their missing prince. He saw Heimdall's all-seeing eyes scanning the realms, never giving up hope. The vision gave Thor strength beyond measure. With newfound clarity, he seized control of both the Elden Ring and the dimensional rift Gideon had inadvertently created. "You sought knowledge without wisdom," Thor told the terrified Gideon as the all-knowing realized his mistake. "But your folly has shown me my path forward." With a gesture, Thor banished Gideon not to death, but to study, imprisoning him in the divine library of Nokron, where he might learn the difference between knowledge and understanding. As the chaos subsided, the survivors gathered around Thor, Godfrey bloodied but unbowed, Ranni, her spell exhausted but successful, Melina, her purpose fulfilled in unexpected ways, and the few remaining tarnished who had not fled or fallen. "What happens now, God of Thunder?" Godfrey asked, still ready to continue their battle if necessary. "Does the realm gain a new tyrant, or something else?" Thor looked around at the devastation their battle had caused, then up at the wounded Erd tree. The ring's power still flowed through him, but now he controlled it rather than being controlled by it. "I came to this realm as an exile," Thor said, his voice carrying to all corners of the lands between. "I claimed power out of fear and desperation. I nearly destroyed what I might have protected." He raised Mjolnir, now restored to its true form without the corruption of chaos. "I cannot undo the damage I have caused, but I can ensure it was not in vain." Using the power of the Elden Ring, Thor began to heal the land. The scarred battlefield sprouted new growth. The Erd tree's wounds slowly closed as its light stabilized. Even the fallen warriors were given proper rest, their souls freed from the cycle of endless rebirth that had trapped the tarnished for generations. "I will not be your Elden Lord," Thor declared. "This realm needs to determine its own fate, not have one imposed by an outsider." In the days that followed, Thor worked with Rani, whose Age of Stars vision aligned with his own understanding of cosmic balance. Together, they reformed the Elden Ring, removing the flaws that had led to the shattering while preserving the great rune's power. Godfrey, recognizing Thor's change of heart, offered his experience as first Elden Lord to guide the transition. The remaining demigods, seeing that Thor sought to restore rather than rule, cautiously joined the effort. As the lands between began to heal, Thor spent more time studying the dimensional rift. With Rani's help and the power of the reformed Elden Ring, he learned to stabilize and expand it. "You can return home," Melina told him one evening as they stood beneath the restored Erd tree. "Your work here is done." Thor nodded, looking up at the stars that now shone clearly in the night sky. "Yes, but not empty-handed. This realm has taught me much about power and responsibility, lessons I should have learned long ago." "What will you tell your father?" she asked. Thor smiled, a gesture free from the madness that had once consumed him. "That I found my worth not in conquering a realm, but in helping to save one." On the final day, as the portal to Asgard stabilized, representatives from all factions of the lands between gathered to witness Thor's departure. Even those who had opposed him recognized that he had in the end chosen the harder path of restoration over the easier path of dominion. Thor stood before the portal, Mjolnir in hand, the power of the Elden Ring now carefully distributed among worthy bearers, rather than concentrated in a single ruler. "I came to your world as a fallen god," he addressed the assembly. "I leave it as a humbled one. May the bridges between our realms remain open, not for conquest but for wisdom." Godfrey stepped forward, offering his hand in the warrior's grip. "You would have made a terrible Elden Lord," he said with a grim smile. "But you've proven yourself a worthy ally." Rani approached next, her doll form glowing with ethereal light. "The stars connect all realms, Thunder God. Should you ever wish to return, look to them for guidance." One by one, the others said their farewells. Melina, Bled, even Morgoth, who had come to respect Thor's final choice, if not his initial actions. As Thor prepared to step through the portal, he turned one last time to the world that had both broken and remade him. The Erd tree stood tall once more, its golden light now mingled with the blue of Rani's moonlight and the silver of the stars. "In Asgard, we speak of Ragnarok, the end of all things that makes way for new beginnings," Thor said. "Perhaps that is what this was, my personal Ragnarok, the death of who I was and the birth of who I needed to become." With those words, Thor crossed the threshold. The god of thunder returned to Asgard not as conqueror, but as protector, not just of his realm, but of all realms that existed in the great cosmic tree that connected all existence. And in the lands between, they would tell his story for generations to come, not as a tale of invasion, but as a legend of redemption. The story of a foreign god who claimed the Elden Ring, faced madness itself, and chose to relinquish power rather than be consumed by it. In the end, that was his true worth.